let's talk about the news. And a strange thing happened this weekend. Now, no, I am not squeezing a stone to get one little more drop of blood out of it, but remember what they said about the American election over and over again. Press play.
New poll has Kamala Harris and Donald Trump locked in a dead heat.
Latest Wall Street Journal poll.
New Washington Post poll out this morning.
Harris up by 4.
Deadlocked race.
A tied race.
According to most polls in the United States, this election is very close and could go either way.
And Bendigo, was the result a tie? No, I didn't think so. Who won again? Trump. And how big? Big, I thought so that'd be the case. Well trained, everyone. Well done. You get a fish and you get a fish and you get a fish. Well done. Well, of course, the people who were far more accurate than the polls, and I said this at the time as a person who spent way too much reading them, is let's have a look at the bookies. Now, the bookie, the red line, of course, is Trump. The blue line was Biden, who was, I think this is his heart rate, actually. He was dead for many months. And then they gave him a little pack-a-whacker, and then he died again. And then, of course, Kamala took over in the pantsuit, and joy and love and all the rest of it. And then she pissed $1 billion against a wall, and he kicked her ass. Is that good education about politics? All right, excellent. Now, as you can see, they were pretty clear. So I think you might know where I'm heading, because it won't surprise you that when we go on the road every now and then on the Friday or the Saturday night, after the chats have finished, after the politics has been discussed, there'll be a little bit of a pull out of some of those sports bet apps or the Tab app or the Ladbrokes app, and we'll be betting on dogs in South Africa at 2 o'clock in the morning. But while we were doing so, we noticed, what are the odds for the upcoming federal election? Is it a line ball or not? Well, remember, according to many of those that speak politically for a living, they say that Australia's definitely headed towards a minority government. They say that there's a most chance that Labor ends up being there because, as I bored you before about the Teals and all the rest of it. But have a look right now. Sportsbet has the Coalition as favourites after the next election. Now, that is an expectation that they will form government with a minority, but Labor is now starting to blow out. Now, this is not me saying that jump on one or the other, but it is fascinating that the indicators that the polls are telling us ever so tight, but it'll fall Labor's way. These things tell us ever so tight, but it'll fall the Coalition's way. The TAB, their Tab app, is exactly the same, where they are saying by an even bigger margin, they think that the Coalition is going to get there, or with greater certainty. Now, again, the way that all of these bookies work, and certainly in Australia, you should remember, one of these companies said that Shorten was going to win in 2019. They even paid out a couple of days before, thinking that was going to be the result. But a fascinating little look here, which means some of the outer analysis about Australian politics is maybe something we should be paying attention to. Let's not be surprised by what results end up turning up. Let's look at what might be coming. And of course, there is one person who has been saying by the Financial Review, and he's a former Labor senator, that there could well end up being such a significant change after just one term of this mob that, yes, Dutton and the Coalition, they'd take some Teals, they'd take plenty of Labor. Labor would lose potentially to people like the Greens. So we are on our way to not just a tight result, but according to the bookies, a change of government after one term. Now, Bendigo, I know many people who vote here vote opposite than this room, but how does this room feel about a one-term Albo government? That might be the case. Which brings me to what I have been thinking about ever since the Trump election, and I've been slowly thinking about over months, which is, what is this next federal election going to be about? Now, we know what the issues are. We know that the difficulties that people have had when it comes to cost of living becomes pretty clear. We know that on multiple polls, in multiple ways, we're told that the majority of the country thinks that we're headed in the wrong direction. But as we have a look at the candidates that are going to be up and available for government, I want to credit a very dear friend of mine who's been seeding this idea for a little while, but in the past couple of days, he's poured as much fertiliser on it as possible, and it's now starting to grow as my central theory of the case, which is politics often is something that we talk about in relation to demographics like age or sex, or for some it'll end up being religion or race. I certainly think that what we saw in the United States was a realignment of things where it was your economic circumstance that was the ultimate determinant of your vote. Can I offer another theory, though? That I think in many ways this election is going to be about Do you want the state to control your life, or do you want to control your life? On what sorts of issues do you want to be left alone? On what sorts of things do you want to be trusted as a parent or as a grandparent? Now, again, traditionally, Australia can have a conversation about collective responsibility, which traditionally has been of the left, and personal responsibility, which has been of the right. But this is something different when I talk about that sense of control. Think about between now and the election, and certainly the past 3 years since our election, about the types of politicians who want to ban something, or change something, or limit something, or overfund something, or restrict something. And then think about the world before these people existed, say in 2022, or let's even go back to 2010. We don't have to get in the Wayback Machine and get out the Swan Lager and pretend that we've just won the America's Cup in 1983. We can have this conversation about our 21st century, which is about your want to control your life. And it's not a conversation about oppression versus freedom. It's about your right to make decisions about your life. Now, at times, I've disappointed plenty of people with my views on all sorts of different issues, but I always turn around and say, things like gay marriage or euthanasia, like your choice to say no shouldn't rule out somebody's ability to say yes and vice versa, all right? We want a system that says, well, I'm not planning on using this system or that system. I want the availability of somebody who wants to go and do it to go and do it. But as soon as the state starts turning around and saying, look, at this fork in the road, we're going to take away choice. We're going to tell you there's one choice that needs to be made over others. And I think that's going to be a massive factor at this election. The first signs of people in and around this issue is going to be, particularly men between 35 and 55. These are men who have been brought up in a left-wing education system. These are people who may well have paired off into partnerships or started to have children. They may well have entered the workforce, owned their own business, had an ABN, paid the taxes, filled out the forms, and you can see that they are starting to track in a very different direction than where they were even 3 years ago. Now, again, for the smartasses that are watching or the people that are thinking, oh, he's just trying to pull a Trump. There is no way that you pull a Trump in the Australian system. We don't vote for a single person. We vote for local MPs. We vote for parties. There's the control of the Senate. But I will be fascinated to see at this election about the types of policies that are put in front of us, because I'm not entirely sure that Australians are desperate to hear that there's a government planning to spend more money than they did last time on a problem that will only be exactly the same as it was before they threw more money at it. I have a feeling that we're going to have an attraction to politicians who are going to say, hey, we're going to try to get out of your way. Imagine that as a 33-day election campaign where you don't have an announcement a day, you have a promise every day, which I'm going to get out of the way. I'll do my best to, within responsible targets, pull back on a whole collection of things like regulations,